Hey guys, it's Bill from Linden, Tennessee again. Got a little Jeep update for you. Skipped last weekend because there really wasn't a whole lot to show. I'll go over today what I did last weekend, but I'm going to add that to what I did basically today. So I live out in sort of in the sticks, a little 800 square foot, basically a cabin right on the Buffalo River. And I've got a porch that sort of overlooks the river itself in the backyard. And the one thing that I hate about this house is that porch has a chair on it, and I sit on that chair, and before I know it, I've just wasted half a day, and I don't get anything done. That's what happened to yesterday between cutting the grass and sitting on that chair. I digress. Jeep progress. Let's go around and look at my contactor box. That's what I did last weekend. I'm pretty excited about that. Let's see, I don't have a light. So, this is basically finished. So what we got going on here, this is the most positive, this is the positive cable going to the inverter. This is the negative cable going to the inverter. I haven't got it wired, obviously, but that's where the negative cable coming from the battery will be. And then from here is where the negative cable from the positive cable from the battery will be. Down here on the bottom, these three inputs. One of these is for the battery heater. One of these is for the cabin heater. And the other one is all the signal inputs from the BMS or the drive unit or whatever to drive these relays and contactors and stuff. So here in the middle, we got our pre-charge contactor. This is out of a Nissan Leaf battery pack. Underneath all these breakers is the little resistor that's used to do the pre-charge for the positive contactor. This red mini tack contactor is for the battery heater, and the white mini tactor is for the cabin heat. Over here we've got just a negative battery terminal. That way I can just put the charger and the DC-DC converter in there, and then the negative side of the battery heater and cabin heater. I've got a little relay over here that is used so that the BMS can control, which one does it control? Oh, it controls the negative contactor, because that negative contactor is attached to the discharge enable of the BMS. There's a lot of relays and stuff inside that BMS, and it takes a lot of minutes to kind of go through that. But basically, if the BMS sees current flowing through from the battery, either in or out, it'll throw a fault and it'll freak out. I'm not sure what freak out means, but it will throw a fault, and I don't want faults. So whenever I turn the key on, it'll turn the BMS will turn the negative contactor on, and that will just allow current from the negative battery terminal to flow into the negative side of the high voltage pack. And then whenever I rotate the key forward, that'll tell the drive unit to switch the positive contactor on, but it has to go through a pre-charge first so that it can charge the capacitors inside the inverter. If it wasn't for that pre-charge, putting current slowly into those capacitors, this contactor would close basically an open, or basically a short. Whenever you charge a capacitor, it's basically a short as far as the battery is concerned until the capacitor is full, and then it's not anything. It's just a full capacitor, but makes a big old fat spark, and it welds contactors. Not good. So that's that. And then I never did get my little cover panel for that yet, but I'm gonna eventually. And the other thing I got done was on the wiring, the factory wiring harness. I reassigned one of these factory relays, that one right there. That was going to be my air conditioner relay, but I'm not going to have air conditioning. Sorry, honey, no air conditioning. It's a Jeep, for crying out loud. Yeah, so I basically finished all of these wiring. I've got power going to the charger DC-DC converter. I've got power going to the inverter, and I've got power going to everything. So that's pretty cool. Got these little leads here. One of these is for the drive unit pump output, and the other one is for the battery pump output. And this one right here is for, what's this one for? This one is for the fan relay. So there's going to be 2 water systems, at least initially. Sorry about the rain. Of course it starts raining as soon as I start talking. There's going to be 2 water systems, one for the batteries and one for the drive unit. I don't really think the batteries are ever going to get particularly hot because I'm not going to be drag racing this thing, and I'm not going to be driving it on a race course. I'm just going to be cruising down the road at 55, 60 miles an hour, and I suspect that that's only going to pull about 50 amps, maybe less, probably less, and that's not even going to make the batteries work hard. So, and then for the heater, I will have a battery heater in that battery coolant circuit, but I don't think I'm going to use that either, because in Middle Tennessee, yeah, it gets cold here, but as long as you drive the car for a little while, even if it's really, really cold, if you're driving the car internally, the batteries will be warm-ish, or at least warm enough to charge. The only time you have to worry about warming up the batteries is if for some reason you park the car in the evening after work or something, and it sits all night through Saturday, and it's been below freezing the whole entire time, and now the batteries have cold soaked and their internal temperature is below freezing. Now you're in a situation where you can't just simply charge the batteries. You have to warm them up first. But that's absurd. I don't think I'm ever going to end up in a situation like that. It's just not going to happen. Why would I not charge my battery when I get home? I don't. Anyway, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. If the batteries do get warm and the coolant system is used, then great. And if not, then I'll just take my 2 radiators that I've been working on today, the mounts for these things. And so the one on the left is going to be for the drive unit, and the one on the right is for the batteries. So if it turns out that my batteries need neither heat or don't really need a lot of cooling, then what I'll do is I'll just combine these 2 together. So it'll just go from the drive unit, the left one, down to the bottom where you see the output there, and then just make a little U into the one on the right, and then just come out of that one and just have one, basically one radiator, one sort of big radiator that services the drive unit and the batteries. 2 pumps still, individually controlled, and 2 fans, which may or may not be individually controlled. I don't think so. They'd probably just put them on the same circuit. I don't know. We'll get to that. That's quite a ways down the road. But anywho, so today that's what I've been doing, is making the brackets for this thing. The top bracket was kind of a pain in the butt. This is the original Durali bracketry for their mounting system, and it looked like that when I started. And so what I did was, I've got this original mount here that was for a radiator grill support. So I used that mount for the top, and I had to shorten up this aluminum piece. So I had to get my TIG welder out and try and find my aluminum welding skills. They're hidden in the garage somewhere. This aluminum is weird though. There's probably 500,000 different alloys of aluminum, and some you can weld and some you cannot. This falls into it's really hard to weld category. But I mean, it did, it's pretty good. So this one is, this top bracket is is sort of holding it from tilting backwards. The bottom one, I'll show you that in a minute, is going to be the support for the radiators themselves. It'll hold them up from the bottom, so that it makes the top support, or the top bracket, not as critical. And then around here up in front, got the two fans. Got a piece of wood right there because it's just a thin 1/4 inch piece of particle board or whatever it is, for like siding inside the house. And you put that up there. Just got zip ties on it. You put that up there, and then you make your mounts, and then you have these fans butted up against it when you make the mounts. And then that way, when you're finished, you remove this piece of board, and then the fans will sit, with roughly 1/4 inch of space, and it'll make sure the clearances are all kept. Yeah, so that's that. Got my outputs for my fans. This big one here is the output for my fog lights, and these two, one of these is for the coolant fan, and one of these is for the, one of them's for the battery coolant fan, one's for the drive unit coolant fan. So that's what I did last weekend, and then this weekend, like I was saying, I did the supports for the radiator. And this is the lower support for the radiator. This will sit up under the radiator like that. Those two holes right there I put some nut back there, and then you put a bolt through the lower Durali bracketry there, and then the actual Durali fan itself will sit on this. I'll probably put like a piece of foam or a thin piece of rubber or something, just so there's not that aluminum, so that aluminum doesn't directly contact this here. That's probably what I'll do. This thing was really a pain in the butt to make. It's upside down. You got to get on the creeper and roll around upside down, and the axle's in the way. All the steering linkage is in the way. That cross member that I added for the front of the battery box support is in the way. Everything's in the way. It's terrible. And what happens when that is, you end up with these bubble gum looking awful welds that what you really want to do is just paint them before anybody gets a chance to look at it. But I wanted to show you that not all welds end up looking nice. So the deal is, I really enjoy actually doing upside down awkward welds, because if you do that and you can get pretty proficient at it, then whenever you're sitting at a bench doing normal welding, then you can whip up some pretty nice results. So that is that. As far as batteries go, I pulled the gas tank box out, and I've loaded it up here, trying to figure out. I got that front panel on, but trying to figure out how I'm going to do all the BMS wiring and the main 2-aught wiring for the high voltage system. And what I've come up with is I'm going to use Ampseal connectors. I'm going to use 35-pin Ampseal connectors. Each of these 4 modules has six cells wired in series. As six cells wired in series. So there's going to be 6 outputs for the BMS per module. So 6 times 4 is 24. And then there's one thermistor per module also. So 24 and 4 is 28. And then there's a negative. Then I'll pull a negative off of each of these cells. So that's another 6. And then there's one negative for each. There's one negative that's shared among all the thermistors. So you add all that stuff up, and it's something less than 35. So I've got a 35 pin Ampseal connector that I'll probably mount here or on the other side. And then that way, whenever I lower or raise the battery, then I can just click that and it'll come off. Otherwise, the only way to get all this stuff together is I'm going to have to put the connectors on as I load batteries into it. So I'll load a module in, and I'll put one of the leads of these here dudes. They go between the cells. So I'll put one of these on kind of hand tight, then put the BMS wires in, and then put the next module on top of it, put this one on, tighten them both down, put the next BMS, put the next one on that, put the next one in, and so on and so on. So I'll have to load the things up first. So it was just going to be really impractical to not have some sort of a connector on each battery box. But what that means for me is each of those 35 pins, there's a crimp connector at each BMS terminal in the module, and then there's going to be solder connectors on the male side of that Ampseal connector that's going to be bolted to the battery box, and then there's crimp connectors on the female side of the connector that's going to be wired into the BMS harness. Oh, that's a lot of soldering and a lot of crimping. But you know what? That's what you got to do. You want to make your own car, you're going to have to, do some tedious crimping. But I like it. I enjoy it. And you end up with something that's truly your own, that there isn't another one at all. So that's where I've been. That's where I am. And I'd say you are now officially updated. And I will talk to you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.